So the other day, I was watching a clip that John Campea put up from his John Campea show, and somebody had called in because he does these little Mint Mobile call-ins now, and because that's their sponsor, one of the sponsors anyway. And this person asked, about confirmation for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which is, basically part one of a two-part story. The other one being Beyond the Spider-Verse, coming out within the next year or two. But they asked about the runtime because they heard that it was going to be a lot longer than the average animated film. Well, John Campea did, reply to that, and he said if you look online at AFC, they have confirmed that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is going to be running in or clocking in anyway at 2 hours and 20 minutes, thus eclipsing the 1978 Lord of the Rings animated film by Ralph Bakshi. I think that's who it was, Ralph Bakshi. Yeah, Ralph Bakshi, if you will, the guy that's behind Fritz the Cat and all that. That it's going to be eclipsing that by at least 8 minutes. Now, does that make it the longest movie of all time? Overall, no. That, according to what I looked up online, especially if you utilize, ChatGPT and Google Bard AI system. What I've looked up online, that honor of longest running film of all time goes to Ben-Hur. To the Ben-Hur movie, which clocks in about 4 hours 27 minutes. That's a long movie. No wonder they have intermissions for a movie like that. But but according again to what John Campea reported when he answered this question, yes, Across the Spider-Verse is clocking in at 2 hours and 20 minutes. Now, he did show basically some other films, animated films that is, that clocked in at certain long times too, and are considered the longest movies, in theatrical animated history. Now, some might say, well, that's not necessarily true. You also got to account for some of the anime movies out there, some of the international films, animation-wise, that are out there. And yeah, I get that. But if you're looking at worldwide North American releases, then this is the all-time list. North American, worldwide, if you will. But mostly North American-wise. These are basically the top 5, soon to be top 6, longest running animated films of all time. Like I said, you got, I don't know if you can see that there. Excuse me. I don't know if you can see that there. But you've got basically Lord of the Rings at 2 hours and 12 minutes, Fantasia, the original Fantasia, at 2 hours 6 minutes. You have Incredibles 2 tied with it at 2 hours 6 minutes. You have Cars, which clocks in at 1 hour and 57, and then right behind it is Incredibles, the first Incredibles, as 1 hour and 55. Now, excuse me. Now you might say, well, that's not a big issue for Incredibles and Cars and everything, or Incredibles 2. And that might be true because, again, you can sit through, 2 hours, 6 minutes of a film, live action or not, and it would go by, in a breeze, depending on how good it is, in action-packed wise, or entertainment, or comedic wise, or whatever. You can sit through that in a breeze. I mean, especially with now today's technology. Excuse me. With today's technology, you can get through something like, let's say, let me see if I can pull it here. Get my hands on it. Let me see which one do I. Hold on. I know I have it. Okay, here we go. You can get through something like, let's say, Avatar, if you want to, in a breeze without a problem, because, if you have it on home video, all you have to do is pause it and everything. All you have to do is pause it and then, restart it where you left off, or stop it, go do what you got to do, come back to it maybe a few hours later or a day later, and you're good to go, especially where you left off. Or if you're watching something like War and Peace, if you will, which is clocked in at, what is it? Oh, let me look at this. Hold on. Clocked in at 2 hours, 218 minutes or something like that. With today's technology, you can watch something like that in, no time flat. Even theatrically, you could do something like that if you wanted to. The only catch theatrically is you would have to basically make sure you've gone to the bathroom, got a lot of, got something to eat first, gone to the bathroom, and then you're good to go. But, nowadays, movies mostly in, let's say, in the 2 hour range or 2 hour plus range is a breeze to get through most of the time. It really is. It really is. I mean, you look at, excuse me, you look at some of the Marvel films that are out there, and they eclipse 2 hours. And I recall going to see Black Panther, when I did, and even though it was over 2 hours, it was about, in a breeze, because it had a good balance of storytelling, action, and all that. The point that I'm getting at is when you hear people asking about, the runtime for an animated film, clocking in at 2 hours 20 minutes, basically becoming the new all-time leader when it comes to runtimes for animated films. Yeah, it's a big deal, but it's not that much of a big deal because you know that if it's good and it's got your attention from beginning to end, hold on for a second. Like I was saying, basically, if it's got your attention and everything, it's going to be a breeze to get through. There is no doubt. It'll be a breeze to get through no matter what the situation. If it's got your attention, it's got, what you want, action, drama, comedy, just an overall balanced out good story, you're good to go. You'll have no problem getting through it without an issue. No problem whatsoever. So, for people to ask and wonder the length of the time for the movie, from an animation perspective, yeah, it's kind of surprising, for people to be curious about that. But I think John Campy has said it best. We live in a day and age that in the past 15, 20 years, especially here in North America and all that, we have had animated films clocking in at over 2 hours or near 2 hours, at most, just like the ones I listed off. So it shouldn't be that much of a surprise, when you find out that something that's been worked on since the very first movie and was actually given a sneak peek of to people at CinemaCon last year and this year with a combine of, 35 minutes in total, on both sneak peeks. That definitely should have given you the hint that this is going to be a long film from by North American animation standards. Now again, is it the longest animated film, internationally across the globe and all that? No. There are anime films that eclipse it. There are international films from, France, Mexico, Russia, believe it or not, Brazil, Europe overall, that probably eclipse, probably do, I should say, eclipse, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. But what this does tell me is if they're already clocking in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse at 2 hours 20 minutes, basically eclipsing the last film by at least a half hour or so, or 20 minutes more, then what that tells me is that more than likely Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, which is Across the Spider-Verse Part 2, that, my friends, I think is going to break this record. I really do. I believe it's going to break this record because why? Because basically they're going to want to top themselves. And they got more story to tell, apparently, or to finish up with in Beyond the Spider-Verse. So what I think is going to happen is when that, trailer gets released within the next year or so, or people start getting sneak peeks, of it a year or two before it's released, which I think they'll get sneak peeks next year, but we'll kind of get like a trailer or maybe a trailer. I wouldn't be surprised if we got a trailer at the end of this film to get us ready. But I have a feeling that Beyond the Spider-Verse is going to eclipse the runtime of Across the Spider-Verse by at least, I would say, 20 minutes, if not 30 minutes. So you could be looking at, right now you're looking at, I should say, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse being the all-time animated, the all-time, I should say, longest animated film. I was trying to think about what I was going to say there. I do apologize, I almost had a brain fart. But you're looking at currently Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse as, the longest running animated film of all time, runtime-wise. But I have a feeling that it's going to get toppled by its sequel, and we could be looking at a 2-hour and 50-minute animated film with Beyond the Spider-Verse. I would not be surprised if that happens. Now, could I be wrong about it? Excuse me. Could I be wrong about it? Absolutely. Absolutely. I can be definitely wrong about it, but I don't think I will be. And I think anybody else watching this realizes that that's a possibility. Because if they're already topping the original time, the runtime, I should say, of the first Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse with this by 20 minutes or so, I've got a feeling they're going to do it again next with the sequel, Beyond the Spider-Verse, by eclipsing it by at least 20 or 30 minutes at most. So you could be looking at the longest running animated film runtime right now with Across the Spider-Verse when it gets released, but don't expect that record to last too much longer. That record's going to get shattered, I've got a feeling, within the next year or two by its sequel. I mean, think about it. It took 45 years for Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings 1978 movie, clocking in at 2 hours 12 minutes, to have its record broken. It took 45 years, almost half a century, or at least close to half a century. Now, it's not even going to take that long for the new record to get eclipsed, in my opinion. That's how I just see it. That's how I see it. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are, guys. How do you feel about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse clocking in at 2 hours 20 minutes, becoming the all-time longest running runtime animated film in history, North American-wise anyway? And do you think its sequel might topple that, with Beyond the Spider-Verse? Let me know down below in the comments. We'll have a little live chat during the premiere. Like the video. And until next time, guys, I'll talk to y'all later.